Okay, here we are. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Nichols, AEG's Social Media Director, back with another LinkedIn Live. And I'm super excited today to have Margarita Womack with me. Margarita is the founder and CEO at MasPanadas, and she was our guest speaker at our September Elite Advisor meeting. So we're excited to have her. Margarita is also the Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year Mid-Atlantic, one of the top CEOs, Washington Business Journal awardee, and recent Montgomery County Business Hall of Fame and inductee, which is when we had her on our as one of our speakers. So I'm really happy she's here to join us today and talk about her entrepreneurial journey and some of her top tips for entrepreneurs. So Margarita, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you. I'm Margarita Womack. I'm originally from Colombia. Came now 20 plus years ago to the US. I studied science before I got into entrepreneurship, and now here I am to talk about MasPanadas.
Excellent. So tell us about opening MasPanadas and how you decided you wanted to be an entrepreneur. I know that's a lot, but what happened with that? That's a fascinating story.
It wasn't necessarily a very conscious decision. Honestly, it was to a certain degree serendipity.
Yeah.
In a way, I've learned that you can be very adaptable, right? And move into directions that might be more favorable at different times. And I was teaching at that point, had a full-time job and 3 little boys at home, and just needed some help. And a friend of mine came from Colombia. And to be honest, it was meant to be a little catering company out of my home kitchen that would provide her with a job as a chef. And I had no idea what I was getting into, to be honest. You can't get the permits and licenses for food production in Maryland from your kitchen. So we went to an incubator kitchen in DC. It's a shared commercial kitchen called Union Kitchen. And we started working out of there and got immersed in the food and bev world. And I fell in love with it, to be honest, and realized that within our menu, empanadas were bestsellers, and there was a true business opportunity in frozen foods. So pivoted to that and quit my job at that point. I was having too much fun with the empanadas. My family had pretty much a heart attack. They even did an intervention, like, wait a minute, what are you doing? This is street food and frozen and in the United States. Like, what are you doing? So, but I really had the sense that this would make sense and that it was very fulfilling, and continued down that journey. We outgrew the incubator kitchen 18 months into it, then moved into a small facility in Rockville. We doubled the size of it in 2020, and we actually just moved out of it, and we have been now for a month into our new plant that was built custom for us.
Congrats. I actually did see about moving into the new plant. So I think that's great. I love that you took advantage of an incubator, because I would imagine that starting a commercial kitchen on your own would be a daunting task. So did you really fall into the incubator, or was that something you were looking for at the time?
I just needed a commercial kitchen. So I started looking around. Well, how do I find a commercial kitchen that I can use? The thought was maybe there has to be like a church that has a commercial kitchen that I could have access to and rent, for a few hours. But then I stumbled upon this option, and you had to apply for the incubator. At the beginning, I did not. So you could just use the kitchen. And it's just a monthly kind of rental fee. But then once we realized, like, hey, there's something here with the empanadas, it made sense to join the incubator to really learn the ins and outs of the industry and how to be successful at it. So it's certainly something that, being an entrepreneur, it's not something you do in the vacuum. And you might have, as an entrepreneur, the drive, the passion, the grit, the risk tolerance are sort of big pieces, but you have to have a community around you to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think that's a great lesson, and also, a great thing to encourage people to do is have a community, because you definitely, as an entrepreneur, can get very isolated very easily. I think it might have been a little bit harder for you because of needing the commercial kitchen, but still, if you don't have the support that you need, and someone to help you and to I think, show you the path on certain things that you don't know about, it can be really overwhelming. So I think that's great. And how long did you stay with the incubator?
So I'm technically still part of it.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, the program was so the intensive part of it
Hmm.
was a few months when they were really hands-on, and I know it's evolved significantly since then. We were one of the earlier, a part of the earlier cohorts, but in a way, it's sort of like a mini MBA nowadays. And but I still part of the group. I still interact often with the community, and we still support each other. I was actually there this past weekend. They had a big event that they do yearly, Meet the Makers. That's a wonderful opportunity
Oh,
to
nice. Yeah.
then showcase what you have done, meet some of the other entrepreneurs, and do a showcase to the community.
Very cool. That's great that you're still doing that. And Margarita, I wanted to ask you, when you went from say catering to knowing that the empanadas were a bigger thing, like was that a huge shift, or was it more like, oh, I'm noticing this pattern, let's maximize that, and then how do we get our empanadas out in the world? How did that thought process come about?
So it was fairly gradual. We had this large menu, and what people most often ordered were empanadas. So like, well, it's definitely a pattern here. And catering, you can't really grow it too much, right? It's something
Yeah.
you do at a small footprint. And that was the original thing. It was just meant to be a small business. I was meant to be working in my full-time job as a teacher. It wasn't supposed to be this big thing. And but then once we started getting to the incubator and thought like, hey, this makes sense in frozen. Well, it's not such a simple pivot either. Not something you do kind of just like turn off catering, turn on frozen foods. The food industry, once you get into what's consumer packaged goods, it's lots of rules and regulations and
Mhm.
tons of steps in between. So you just can't just walk up to Whole Foods and say, I have this wonderful product, you should have it on shelf, and that's that. No, it's there's all these steps in between, and you have to have a certain size and have certain pieces in place. For instance, the right packaging with the right nutritional label. And you have to get said packaging, said nutritional label. First, you have to have all of your USDA paperwork in order and your
Mhm.
registration and get the right seal, right? So there's all these pieces in between that you have to understand and do. So we actually continued with the catering for a period, increased the menu to practically just empanadas and a few sides. It was a very good opportunity to also kind of test what people liked or didn't like, what resonated in general with people, say the flavors, the sizes, the ingredients. And then we tried farmers markets.
Mhm.
And then we walked up to our neighborhood little grocery store in Arlington Boulevard, Bethesda. And then from there, then let's try something a little bit bigger. And we were able finally to have everything ready to launch in 2019. So about a little bit over a year into actually deciding we wanted to do empanadas to be able to launch. And we did so out of, oh my goodness, and I just forgot the name. It was a grocery store. It just had two locations in DC. And the owner was incredibly friendly to founders, and especially female founders. So she gave us the opportunity to launch out of her grocery store
Mm.
and Glenn's Garden Market. There we go.
Okay.
And from there, then you have to have those pieces. You have to be able to say, we are at this store. This is what the packaging looks like. People like the product. This is how it sells here before a store will take you on. And from there, it starts snowballing because growing requires that momentum, and gaining that momentum at the beginning can be quite hard. So we didn't really stop doing catering till very early in the pandemic. We still had a group called Hungry that outsources their catering from small
Mm.
chefs. So they go and pick up and set up on location. So all you do is prepare the food, and they pivoted during the pandemic to do more like home deliveries. So we still could produce for them. Once that was done, that was the end of catering, but it was a phase out over a period of time.
Wow, that is a great story. And I will say, every time I go to a farmer's market and I see an empanada stand, I'm just, thrilled. Everybody, as you said, everybody loves them. And I think it sounds like you just hit a great time and despite the pandemic when everything would work. So that's fantastic that you managed to do that. And that was the path. And I will also say so many female entrepreneurs I talk to talk about how opening their business was serendipitous. And it wasn't anything where they said, I want to be an entrepreneur, I have to have this. It was more like life circumstances led them to that point, and then they took advantage of it. So I think it's great that that's your story too. And I think that's wonderful. And I love that you, just the fact that you had to test them everywhere and see how they were going, and it was just such a slow growth is really fantastic. And now tell me a little bit about where you can find your empanadas, because I know your market is definitely growing and growing by leaps and bounds.
We are now available nationwide, Whole Foods, all 550 stores. That's really exciting.
Fantastic.
And we have Sprouts. We have Giant Food, we have Mom's Organic, we have Wise, all in this area. Mid-Atlantic, of course, is sort of our hub and where we have the highest concentration. But you'll find us also with HelloFresh, so online.
Okay.
Subscription, Home Chef. We are wrapping up a rotation at Costco too right now, so you'll find us all across the Northeast at Costco.
I'm going to Costco.
Yeah, we'll check them out next time.
Yeah,
I think they sell for a couple more weeks. Big bags of mini chicken empanadas.
Yummy.
And it's about 30, almost 3,500 points of sale right now for our branded retail. We have 2 other channels. We sell food service. That's starting to grow. We just launched DC schools actually are having our products right now on their menu rotation. And restaurants, event venues, things of the sort that we're looking to grow. And we do private label too, as we do the manufacturing. So make empanadas under other people's brands.
Congrats, because that sounds fantastic. Was it a lot of knocking on doors for you, or did people kind of hear about you and say, I need these in my store?
Different paths for sure. At the beginning, you'll go knock into everyone's door, and it takes many knocks. You have to learn to be an annoying in a nice way. You convince someone to give you a shot. But once you start gaining a little bit of momentum, it becomes easier. Say with Whole Foods, for Amazon bought them, you were able to go to a store and talk to the manager and convince them to give you a shot. You still have to register in their system, and there were all these pieces in between, but you could go store to store and tell them to try your product. Once you have, say, 3 or 4 in a region, and you go to the 5th one, and you just tell them where are those other 4 stores, and this is how it sells. They don't even try it. It was surprising. They would just look at the packaging, check, the velocity, how well it's selling. Okay, I'll give you a shot.
That's great.
Okay.
Then so you weren't like, wait, do you want to try this? Try them. They're really good, I promise.
But they're not really delicious. But so it's interesting to see how a buyer or a manager would judge the potential of a product. Certainly that it's tasty is valuable, but their own opinion of tasty is not necessarily, they want like the general opinion of a larger group of people, right? So the sense that at similar stores, similar area, it sells really well, it means the community that shops at Whole Foods likes it. So that's more important to them in the end as a decision point. That's nowadays it's different. Nowadays we're much larger, so grocery stores have review periods where then they check a certain area of their grocery store and check what's not performing and what needs to go. In the end, if you're coming in on shelf, someone else is living in that shelf. It's prime real estate, and it has to be packed tight, right? So it's very, very competitive. So they hold times where you apply, you say, this is my product, and then you go on to a secondary stage where, okay, they'll talk to you, they'll try the product, they'll hear your pitch, and then make their final decisions of what the shelf will look like at the next reset. And then generally it tends to be like the whole chain at once, or a good chunk of the chain at once.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm going to give, tell everybody if you want to keep seeing MasPanadas at the grocery store, you need to go buy them in bulk to make sure that they stay on the shelf, right? For those reset shots.
Exactly.
um, that's great. I love that journey. I love that insight into getting into a grocery store. We did have a question from Mark. He wanted to know if your family is now on board when they see that this is something that both you and your customers enjoy.
Yes, definitely. It's changed dramatically. They're very excited to see the success, and actually many various of my family members ended up being investors in our seed round.
Wow, nice. Nice. Are they, do you have your family working for you now? Is everybody involved in the business? No?
No, no, we need somebody to have some stability. So my husband works in pharma biotech.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, my kids do very often though. They've learned lots working for the business and just being my kids, because the business is a huge part of my life nowadays, and therefore a huge part of my family's life. So my immediate family, my husband, my 3 kids, the ones that held the intervention were my extended family, my mother and my cousins, my brother.
That's great. That's funny. I will say, it's so funny because I think the things we do, we don't realize how they impact our kids. And so my child is now grown and 20, and he's opened his own small business. And I just never thought that watching me be a business owner throughout his years would have such an effect on him. And so,
yes.
I sit back and I think, well, I can't be upset about it. And I just have to hope he does well because he learned it through me. And so I think that that's great that you're such a good example to your kids about following your heart and being an entrepreneur and working hard and doing it. So you must feel very proud about that too, and about having your kids help you out a little bit.
I do. And it's an important element because there's such trade-offs, right? There's the work as an entrepreneur is so incredibly demanding that sometimes you have to pick what is it that you can do with your time, right? And so there has to be compromises, and versus some of my friends that have either jobs that are not so consuming or don't work, right? And so they center so much more attention around their kids. Sometimes there's a sense of guilt, I'm not gonna lie, that I'm missing out on some things or not necessarily being there as much as I should. But then there's this side, they're seeing their mother working what it takes to get a company off the ground. And probably the proudest moment and the sense like, oh my God, I did not quite realize what difference it makes. So this Meet the Makers event that I mentioned that happened just this past weekend, 2 years ago, I took my then 12-year-old to help me. He was supposed to be in the back prepping the empanadas for samples. So it's a mini expo. People come by, want samples, want to talk to you. And there were so many people coming by that he ended up talking to people himself, people that were curious about the brand and wanted to learn about what we were doing. And I had a rep for a very large distributor that we were after at that point send me an email after the fact. I'm so shame I couldn't talk to you, but I talked to your son. He was impressive. He did an amazing. So look at that. He was able to pitch the company at 12 and actually do so successfully and get us a distributor we were after.
Oh my gosh, I would be crying about that. That's fantastic. That's a great story. So now your 12-year-old has quite the career in taking over the family business, right? No, that's a beautiful story. That's really great. I think you froze during part of it, but I think, or maybe it's just for me, but I think everybody got the main part of it. So that's really neat. I love that. I know we're coming up on 20 minutes and I don't want to take all of your day. So, I wanted to, first of all, say thank you for coming on, but kind of to wrap up, do you have any tips that you can give other entrepreneurs, whether they want to be in this space or any space or in general? Like what helped you in your journey?
Absolutely. I think one item we can already covered in a way is that adaptability, that flexibility. So make sure you're always keeping your eyes open for changes and generally the environment. I guess there's the biologist in me, right? That it's almost in evolutionary terms, right? And adaptability, the way it works in nature. So because the pandemic was a great lesson in that sense, right?
Yes.
Conditions are always changing and your business and your take on your business has to be able to adapt. So you might have a big goal. Don't be married to that big goal. Check how things are changing the way and adjust. I think that's a big piece of success. Another piece is being very aware of the work, the energy, the sweat, the tears, the blood that it takes to make it happen. It's not easy. It's highly romanticized nowadays, but it's not easy. So you have to have that will, that passion, that grit. So make sure that is the case before you jump in. The other piece that also came up is this is not something you do in the void. You have to build a community around you that can support you in so many different ways. It's the mentorship, the advice. It's somebody to just talk to sometimes. Is your family that have to be there, and you have to be able to count with them. It's the government, right? That's also another piece. So there's all this huge community around you that you need. So always be searching for that support and those connections, that network. And probably the last piece is always see your business as an iteration, always something that can be improved, but small steps at a time. Especially early on when you're starting is the time to go crazy and try everything. Make as many mistakes as you can, because you can learn so much from those mistakes. And early on, you're not gonna fall too far. Once you're so much larger, those mistakes are much more costly, and you learn just as much from them. So just do them at the beginning, and before you take on a big step, just make sure you learn lots and you have enough evidence that that step makes sense.
I love, those are great tips. I thank you so much. And I could dive into each one of those for about hours. I will say I also have a biology background too. That was what I went to school for. And I don't do anything with it now, but still really, really enjoy the field. So I think that's great.
It's great training.
It really
for everything.
It is. I love
Science.
having kind of that science background. It really makes me look at things in a different way and analyze more. So very cool. So yeah, that's neat. Okay, well, love the tips. Like I said, I could dive into each one of those and have a follow-up. Maybe we'll do that on something subsequent. So I want to thank you so much for your time, Margarita. It's been such a pleasure to have you on here. I hope everybody who's watching both live and on the broadcast has something to take away from it. And we look forward to hopefully having you see us more at AEG and more of our meetings, because it's just really a joy to speak to you. And I love everything that you've brought in terms of talking about your entrepreneurial journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We are supposed to have a LinkedIn Live broadcast next month, so stay tuned to see who our guest is going to be then. So thanks.